Good morning, everybody. It's been 2 weeks since I've had a live on this Facebook group. So I'm excited to be here and to talk to you about the 4R's of overcoming anxiety. I know that you can overcome anxiety because I went through it and I know that God has delivered me from it. And I'm going to share with you how to do that today. Okay. And so at the end of this, you may have questions. You can even ask them as we're going along. I'll try to pick up on the comments. But is it possible to overcome anxiety? Absolutely. Just know that right off the bat. Yes. The answer is absolutely yes with the Lord 100%. So, excuse me. I went through anxiety in my early 20s, battled it as a kid here and there. It's a long story and I won't get into it. I do have a podcast episode I'll put in the comments that explains more about my own experience with anxiety and just how sometimes it can just cripple you and become its own personal like hell and prison. So when I was going through anxiety, I pleaded with God a lot that He would take away my anxiety. And I realized that God didn't do that. And at times I would wonder, like, why isn't God taking away this anxiety? He sees me in my torture and this torment and this inability to live my life. Why wouldn't He just take it away? Because God can do that, right? But I realize now, as I look back now and I realize God doesn't want to take away our anxiety as much as He wants to transform our lives by changing our thought process. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. So that's really the answer to overcoming anxiety. Anxiety is a mental health disorder and the biggest one in the US today. Okay. The biggest mental health disorder is anxiety and depression in our country. It's become so common and common remedies are given for anxiety, such as medication and therapy and things like that. But those things don't transform our thinking, okay? A pill is not going to transform your thinking and deliver you from anxiety. It can numb pain, it can take the edge off of things, but it's not going to deliver you or transform your thinking, like I said. Anxiety is a crippling thing to go through, and it does steal our joy. It keeps us stuck and in the moments that we're in, and it disables us really from living the life to its fullest that Jesus said. He came so that we may have life and that we'd have it more abundantly. So anxiety steals all those things and it cripples. Trust me, I know it's terrible. It's a terrible thing. There are so many verses in the Bible about anxiety and depression. But again, I'm just going to leave a comment. I leave in the comments a podcast that I was on that gives you a lot more Bible verses that I'm going to give you today. And like I said, it's going to tell you about my own experience with anxiety, because if you're there, I get you. I understand it can be hell a lot of times. So today I want to give you the hope that God can transform your life and get you out of it. So we're going to stick with the 4R's instead of all the verses that we can go through that will help transform and bring transformation of the thought process to you and give you that deliverance. Okay. So, the first R is to recognize your thought patterns. So a lot of times we have to be careful what we think on, and it is our responsibility to guard our minds. So do our thoughts align to God's word? And our minds have a default. We have to understand that too. Our minds will default back to the carnal nature, the fleshly nature. It takes, us to negativity, to negative thoughts, to fearful scenarios, and to what if situations. You know, that's a lot of what anxiety is about the what ifs, and, you know, I'm anxious over all of these things that could be, or what if I don't get it done, or what if this happens to my kids, or what if, and what ifs cripple, but they haven't really happened. A lot of times anxiety is illogical. It's not real, okay? So 2 Corinthians tells us this, to take every thought captive and bring it under the obedience of Christ. So how do we do that? That's easy to say. I always say these verses are easy to spit out, right? But how do we actually do it and put it into practice? So if we don't know how to take every thought captive, it actually begins with, is this a good thought or not? Because what's going to happen is your thoughts are either controlling you or you're controlling your thoughts. Those are the only two things it comes down to. Am I controlling my thoughts, or my thoughts controlling me? So when we think something that's negative, or we think something that doesn't align to God's word, we have to grab that thought and say, no, I'm not going to let it take me there. I'm not going to let it spiral me down out of control. And pretty soon I've concocted this whole scenario in my mind of what could happen. And it creates anxiety. Okay. So the Bible tells us that when we get saved, we have the mind of Christ. Yes, that's a great thing. Oh my gosh, I'm a Christian. I have the mind of Christ, but it doesn't always feel like it when my mind is taking me down this path of anxiety, right? So if we do have the mind of Christ, then our thoughts should be coming from the Lord. Okay. But if they're not, and they're putting us in anxiety, they're coming from the flesh. And that's when we have to take those thoughts captive. So let me ask you again, do your thoughts control you? Or are you controlling your thoughts? Are you held captive by your anxious thoughts? Or are you taking those anxious thoughts captive? You have to be able to do that. And that starts with the first R, recognizing your thoughts. Is this from God or is it not? Okay. So then what do you do about it after that? The second R is refocus. We must refocus our thoughts to align to God's word. We have to. Because otherwise, like I said, our default, our conformity will be to whatever's negative in our lives. So in Philippians 4:8, this is how we know how to refocus. Okay. Philippians 4:8 tells us, finally, brethren, whatever things are true. You guys probably know this. You can probably recite it to me right now. Whatsoever is honest, whatsoever is just, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. If there be any virtue, if there's any praise, what does he say? Think on these things. So the Bible doesn't tell us to try to think on those things. The Bible doesn't suggest that we try to think on those things. The Bible commands, think on those things. Think on the things that are true and good and right. We need to align our thoughts to the things that are true and honest and just and pure and lovely and good and virtuous and praiseworthy. And I'm not going to lie, okay? I always try to tell you guys the truth, and even on my podcast, whoever listens, I want to tell the truth and be honest. It's not easy. It takes some effort. It does take effort. I always say this. I bet you we burn calories by training our minds to think right, by transforming our minds, to not allowing it to take us down the rabbit hole of anxious thoughts, right? I think that has to burn calories when we do that, because it's not easy. It's hard. It takes guarding our minds and being on the watching over the thoughts that come into our heads and making sure that we don't dwell on those things that do not align with God's word. But we have to know God's word in order to know if it aligns to God's word. That's key too. Being in God's word and knowing whether or not that this is a thought that would align to God's word. I have to know what God's word says. So the thing about anxiety is it lies to us. Okay, anxiety is a liar. And I've always thought whenever I was anxious, again, it's usually over the things that are irrational and the things that don't quite matter, but they have a hold on me. Have you ever thought to yourself, gosh, why did I worry about that? It ended up working out all right anyways. I have 1,000 times. And then those thoughts of worry and those times of worry, I let it steal those moments. And now I find myself telling my kids these things whenever they're worried or stressed out about something. I always tell them, why are you worried about that? It's going to end up being okay anyways. And you're letting it steal your joy right now. You're letting it steal your joy for the moment, for this time. But that's what anxiety does if we do not control it and it controls us. So it's irrational and it drives us to the point where our thoughts are out of control. And then pretty soon we feel those physical effects, because I will say it again, probably till my last breath, many, many times, that if the spiritual parallels the physical. If I'm anxious and I'm worried and I'm stressing, then the thing is that I'm going to feel that I get a rapid heart rate and I can't eat. When I get anxious, the first thing to go is my appetite. I have to force myself to eat. Well, if my appetite goes, my strength goes with it. And then I'm not able to get through the day. So we have to make sure that we start where the heart of this anxiety begins, and that's in our mind. And it is our job to guard it. Nobody else is going to guard your mind for you. You have to do that yourself, okay? So it brings us back, our thoughts back to what's solid. And that's Philippians 4:8, the things that are true and pure and right and just. And you have to align your thoughts up to those verses, because if they don't, then you know you're thinking on the wrong thing, which means you have to take that thought captive, okay? So we already went over the 2 R's. Now we're on the third one. The third R is getting your mind right. Remember that God did not give you this anxiety, okay? God does not give us the anxiety. he gave us in 1 Timothy 1:7, he did not give us the spirit of fear. You can insert anxiety for fear, because basically those words are inexchangeable. They are exchangeable. They are the same thing. But he's given us power, love, and a sound mind. That word sound mind means a right mind. God has given us the opportunity for a right mind in good working condition. Okay. If our minds aren't working right and it's stealing our lives, our joy, and our livelihood, and it's making us not live the abundant life that Christ has given to us, we're not guarding it. Okay. So anything that goes against a right mind, against a sound mind, is from the enemy. So again, trickle this back to the other R's. I got to refocus my mind to think on what's right, because I'm not thinking what's right now. And then I got to take those thoughts captive. Okay. So we have to realize that some battles, ladies, listen, some battles are spiritual battles. And if they're spiritual battles, that means they cannot be fought with physical means. And anxiety, it cannot be fought with physical means. We will never change the thought patterns with tangible things in our lives. We'll never change our mind and transform it with tangible things. It's just not possible, because it is something, we can't see our thoughts. So guess what we have to fight with? Things that cannot be seen. That's why God gave us his word. God gives us his word to speak life over ourselves, over our situations, to hold on to his word, to meditate on his word, to think on it, to dwell on it, to let that sink into our minds. So you have a right mind. Okay. God gave it to you. So guard your mind and get your thoughts in the right place. That's the third R. The last R is retrain your thought patterns. Okay. This is where it's going to take some effort again, but I'm telling you right now, you can overcome anxiety where you're not battling it for the rest of your life. That's no way to live. I used to do it. I lived it for at least 4 years of hell, and then it went away for a little bit and it came back again. And the Lord taught me, pick up your word, get it into your mind, and fight that way. And so by doing that, it helped me out. So here's retraining your thoughts. Okay. So if we start with the first R, which was recognizing that if your thoughts are aligning to God's word, recognize your thought patterns, healthy, unhealthy, aligned to God's word or not. Then you go into refocusing. Am I thinking on the right things? Philippians 4:8. And then, is this a right mind? Is this the right sound mind that God gave me? If not, I got to retrain. This is the fourth R, okay? Retrain your brain. So Romans 12:2 says this: do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. A lot of times God's word tells us that we're doing one of two things. So I said before, you're either a captive to your thoughts are controlling you, or you're controlling your thoughts. You're either one or the other. You can't be both. Again, here, you're either conforming to the world or you're being transformed by the renewing of your mind. One of the two. The only way we can answer that question is God transforming my mind. Answer this: are you in the word daily? Do you have a relationship with the Lord? Are you meditating on his word? If you can say yes to that, God is transforming your mind. If you say no to that, you're conforming to the world. It's that simple. It's cut and dry, but it also can hurt if we're saying, wait a second, God's not transforming me. Only if you're in the word. That's the only way to be transformed. Okay. So the key word here is transform. If you look at, we all know, we've seen the Transformers, or kids love the Transformers or whatever. It's a complete change. It means it went from a car to a robot. It's completely changed. It's changed its figure, its shape, and everything else. That's transformation. Conformity means when I pour water into a cup, the water has taken on the shape of that cup. That's conforming. God says, don't take on the shape of the world. Don't let your mind take on the shape of the negativity and the fleshly nature that takes on the shape of the world. Transform the mind, change it, a complete change into who God has called you to be, a strong mind. Okay. So that's the key word. Transformation, though, is a process. And if you came to I Am Known, I hate the word process. What does that mean? It means that it's going to take some time. God's going to do it. A little here, a little there, line upon line, precept upon precept. That's the way God works in our lives a lot of the times. It's through a process, and transformation, we know, is a process. But it doesn't mean that every day I don't get stronger. Every day my mind doesn't become more and more transformed into who God's called me to be. So many women struggle with anxiety, but I'm telling you right now, you don't have to. Okay. So I now realize, now that I'm 44 years old, that God didn't take the anxiety away when I asked him to. It's the same as the old saying. I've been telling my husband this a lot. I don't know. I just say, teach a man to fish, teach a man to fish. But it's the same thing. If you give a man a fish, he's going to eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he's going to eat for a lifetime, right? And that's what God's saying. I can take this anxiety away, but you're going to be anxious again tomorrow unless you learn how to transform your mind so you can never be anxious again. And don't you want that? I don't want God to just take away the pain for the moment. I want to be able to face the rest of my life walking and living in victory, because that's what Jesus said. I came that you may have life, Shanda. Not the life that has the anxiety and the depression and, the bouts of the what ifs that come and cripple you every day. I came that you may have it abundantly. Well, you'll never have to experience that because you believe and trust in my word, and you have been transformed by the renewing of your mind. So that is possible. And I wish that I could just continue to share this message every single day of the week, because God showed me that it's possible through his word, through relationship, through meditating on his word. His word is powerful, life-changing, transforming. And that's what I love about it. So God showed me how to transform my entire life by transforming my mind. And that's why I'm able to share with you the things that God has done for me. And don't forget what Isaiah tells us, okay? He says that God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. God's thoughts are so much higher than our thoughts. When we think of those crippling thoughts and we don't know how to put it all together and we're like, God, what is going on? God's thoughts are so above that. And God does not bring his thinking down to my level. He will never bring his ways down to my ways. And thank God that he doesn't, because they're so finite, right? But God transforms your mind. Listen to this. He'll never bring his thinking down to my level, but he does bring my thinking up to his, because he transforms my thoughts and gives my mind on higher things, setting my mind on things that are above and not on things that are beneath. The same with you. God will not take his thinking and bring it down to your level, but through the transformation process, he will take your thinking and bring it up to his level. And you will see things in a whole new light, and you'll have a strong mind where the enemy cannot come in and tell you that life isn't worth living, because you're going to have to deal with this hell every single day, because anxiety and depression literally is hell. And I do understand that. But God is amazing when he gives us the opportunity to transform our mind and to bring our thoughts higher, okay? So if you want to overcome anxiety, you must be transformed by the renewing of your mind, starting with those 4 R's. The 4 R's are: recognize your thoughts, refocus your thoughts, make sure that your thoughts are right, because God gave us a sound mind, and retrain your brain, retrain the thought patterns, okay? So how do we do that? Super easy. Read God's word every day. If you are not reading God's word every day, you're not battling anxiety every day. You're not battling it. You may be battling it according to what you think you're battling it, like, I'm going through it, so I'm battling anxiety right now. You're not fighting it if you're not in God's word. That's just the truth of the matter, because you'll never overcome it. It is getting the best of you every day unless you are in God's word. I'm just being an honest friend here, okay? I know sometimes those things can sound harsh, but I'm being honest with you because I've been there, and I can say this because I know I've lived it, okay? So we must be in the word daily in order to battle anxiety daily. And if you want God to transform your mind, get into his word, get into right relationship with him, and pray. And not only that, meditate on God's word. Put those words on his word on sticky notes. Slap it in your car, slap it on your mirror, slap it on your fridge. Speak it out loud in your home, and you resist the enemy and he will flee. Okay. If you have any questions about any of this, if you need words of encouragement, hope, whatever it may be, you know where to find me. Message me. I'll always message you back. I'm going to leave, like I said, 2 links. I was on a podcast over the summer where I went into depth on how my own experience with anxiety and how God taught me how to be delivered from it. Okay. Again, if you ever want to remember something with anxiety, think of that whole thing: teach a man to fish or give a man a fish. What would you rather do? I'd rather learn how to battle this myself and never have to battle it again than God take away the pain for the moment, okay? And I'm going to leave the link to today's podcast, or this week's podcast, with Megan Ramiro, and she still battles anxiety here and there, but she gives hope for how to do that. So if you have any questions, let me know. I believe in this. I believe in it for you. I believe in your victory and your deliverance, because we don't have to live with this, and we don't even have to take a pill to numb the medication. God can get us through. I truly believe that. But anyways, I'll be praying for you. Let me know if you have anything specific you need help with or need prayer for. But other than that, I'll see you around the group.